Everyone alive right now is going to die. But what if you didn't? What if you woke up tomorrow and every single human being on Earth was gone, except you? Not a movie, not a dream, just you. 8 billion people vanished. And what happens next isn't what you think. Let's set the scene. You wake up, it's a normal Tuesday. Coffee maker is on. Your phone has signal, for now. You step outside, and the street is completely empty. No sirens, no voices, no footsteps. You call someone. Voicemail. You call everyone. Voicemail. This isn't just a thought experiment. Scientists have actually studied this. Psychologists, neuroscientists, urban planners, they've all asked the same question. What would actually happen to a human being left completely alone on Earth? Not just emotionally, biologically, neurologically, physically. The answer is one of the most disturbing things science has ever documented. Because here's the thing, you are not built for this. Your brain, the most complex object in the known universe, was never designed to exist without other people. And science can tell us, almost hour by hour, exactly how it would start to fall apart. This is your life, as the last person on Earth. And it starts right now. The first thing you'd feel isn't fear. It's freedom. No traffic, no work, no obligations. You could walk into any store, take any car, sleep in any bed. For the first few hours, maybe even a couple of days, this would feel incredible. Psychologists call this phase liberation euphoria. Studies of people placed in total isolation, polar researchers, submariners, solitary confinement survivors, show a consistent pattern. The first phase is almost always a burst of relief and energy, but here's where the science gets uncomfortable. Research from Durham University's Solitude lab, led by psychologist Thuy-Viet Nguyen, found something precise. After roughly 10 hours of zero social contact, not days, not weeks, the human brain begins to shift. Energy drops, cravings for connection spike. The quiet that felt like peace starts feeling like something missing. 10 hours. By day 3, you'd miss things you never thought you'd miss. The sound of someone coughing in another room. The smell of a stranger's food. The distant noise of a neighbor's TV. You'd want them back. You'd want anyone back. But nobody is coming. Here's something they never tell you in movies about the apocalypse. Within 24 hours of everyone disappearing, the power grid starts failing. Coal and gas power plants need constant human operators. Without them, they shut down automatically. According to scientists consulted in Alan Weisman's landmark book, The World Without Us, subway tunnels in cities like New York would begin flooding within 36 hours. Water pressure in pipes would collapse within days. You'd be living in the dark, quickly. And that darkness, that silence, would begin doing something terrifying to your brain. Your body would treat permanent isolation as a biological emergency, because evolutionarily, it is one. Being alone in the wild means death. Your nervous system doesn't know you're safe. It only knows no humans detected. Danger. Stress hormones flood your system. Cortisol levels spike. Your heart rate elevates, not from exercise, but from constant, unresolvable threat response. Research published in neuroscience journals shows that long-term isolation causes measurable shrinkage in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and spatial awareness. At the same time, the amygdala, your fear center, becomes hyperactive, more anxious, more reactive, more afraid. Your brain would be physically changing, and not in ways you'd notice, not at first. By this point, the world around you is already shifting. Within weeks, wild animals start moving into cities. Deer on highways, foxes in parks, birds reclaiming rooftops. Nature doesn't mourn us, it just moves in. But inside your mind, something far stranger is happening. Dr. Stuart Grassian, a Harvard psychiatrist, spent years studying the effects of total isolation on prisoners in solitary confinement. What he found became one of the most cited documents in neuroscience. He identified a specific psychiatric syndrome that develops in isolated humans, even healthy ones who had no prior mental illness whatsoever. The symptoms follow a pattern. First, extreme sensitivity to sounds and smells. Things that never bothered you become unbearable. A dripping tap, wind through a broken window, your own heartbeat. Then, intrusive, obsessive thoughts that won't stop. Not sad thoughts necessarily, just thoughts. On a loop. The same memory, the same voice, the same image replaying for hours. Then, and this is where it gets genuinely horrifying, hallucinations. One study of prisoners in isolation, ranging from 11 days to 10 months, documented both auditory and visual hallucinations in nearly every participant. Some heard voices, some saw movement in empty rooms. One prisoner described the cell walls starting to wave. Another said the floor appeared to be crawling with insects. And here's the part that should stop you cold. These weren't mentally ill people before isolation began. Isolation created the psychosis. Researchers call it ontological insecurity. Without other human beings to confirm what's real, to nod at you, to speak back to you, to exist in the same space, your brain loses its anchor to reality. Other people aren't just company, they're how we verify that the world is real. Without them, the line between your thoughts and the external world starts to dissolve. You wouldn't just feel lonely, you'd start to wonder if you were real. Here's the moment this whole story has been building toward. And it's not about survival skills. It's not about food or water. Those problems are real, but they're solvable. The thing that would actually destroy you is something far more ancient. Human beings evolved for hundreds of thousands of years in groups. Our brains are fundamentally social organs, not metaphorically, literally. The structures that regulate emotion, memory, decision-making, and perception, they were all built assuming other humans would be present, always, every day, forever. When you remove that, completely, permanently, you're not just lonely, you're running software on hardware that was never designed to run alone. According to research from Harvard, social isolation raises mortality risk by 29%. Simply being alone, not starving, not injured, just alone, increases your chance of death by nearly a third. Loneliness is as dangerous to your body as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, according to Professor Julianne Holt-Lundstad at Brigham Young University. Now imagine not 15 cigarettes, not one lonely week. Imagine forever. Robert King spent 29 years in solitary confinement in a Louisiana prison. He survived. But when asked what isolation had done to him, he said this: after a while, he lost all interest in communicating. Not because he was angry, not because he gave up, simply because the desire, the ability, slowly faded away, like a muscle that stopped being used. 29 years. You'd be facing an eternity. And here's the cruelest part. The world outside wouldn't be suffering. It would be healing. Within 500 years, most bridges would fall. Forests would swallow cities whole. Within 10,000 years, CO2 levels would return to pre-industrial levels, as if we'd never burned a single gram of coal. Within 1,000,000 years, almost every trace of human civilization would be gone or buried. The pyramids? Dust. The Great Wall. Rubble under forest. Mount Rushmore might last 7 million years, 4 stone faces staring at no one. The Earth doesn't need us. It never did. It would bloom without us, beautifully, silently, and completely indifferent to the one person left watching it happen. That's the real horror of this scenario. Not the darkness, not the hunger, not even the hallucinations. It's the irrelevance. You'd be alive, and completely, utterly, cosmically unnecessary. So what does science actually say about how long you'd last? Physically, you could survive for years, decades even, if you were resourceful. Canned goods last for years. Greenhouses can be maintained. Fresh water can be collected. Your body might outlast your mind by a long time. And that's the real answer to the question this video posed. The science of total solitude doesn't tell us you die quickly. It tells us something much sadder. It tells us you'd change, slowly, irreversibly. The person who woke up on that first silent Tuesday, curious, maybe even excited, would not be the same person still alive 5 years later. The brain rewires under isolation. It has to. It's trying to survive. But in rewiring, it loses things. The capacity for language drifts when there's no one to speak to. Memory begins to blur when there are no shared experiences to anchor it. Emotional regulation, the ability to feel proportionate things at appropriate times, starts to collapse. You wouldn't go insane dramatically. You wouldn't snap. You'd just fade. Quieter, slower, less certain about what's real, less able to remember what it felt like to laugh with someone, less able to imagine that the world was ever full of noise and warmth, and the absolutely miraculous ordinary chaos of 8 billion people just being alive at the same time. And maybe that's the thing worth sitting with. Right now, today, you are surrounded by the one resource that no amount of money, technology, or survival skill can replicate. Other people, the colleague you barely tolerate, the stranger on the street, the voice on the other end of the phone, the family member who calls too often. Science tells us that these people aren't just pleasant to have around. They're the reason your brain works. They're the reason time makes sense. They're the reason you know, really know, that you exist. We came into the world needing each other, and every piece of neuroscience, every psychology study, every account of extreme isolation confirms the same quiet, aching truth. We were never meant to be alone. And somehow, knowing that, the noise of the world doesn't feel so overwhelming anymore. It feels like the most beautiful sound there is. If this made you think differently about the people around you, even for a moment, then it did its job. If you want to go deeper, watch our video on what happened to the 12 people who lived in voluntary isolation for over a year. And what they said they missed most. The answer isn't what you'd expect. Subscribe if you want more stories like this.